Would you be willing to be a living sacrifice? We're going to talk about the daughter of Jephthah. I think that's how you say it. In the book of Judges, Old Testament book, in chapter 11, the whole entire chapter is a beautiful story. But when it comes to starting in verse 29, I think it's often a story in the Bible that many forget about, and I have read this several times. But this daughter of this man who Jephthah, it says back at the beginning of chapter 11, it says that he was a mighty warrior, and God did use him to defeat and then call out these other, what were their names? The king of Ammon. So starting in verse 30, it says, "Whatever comes out of the door of my house to meet me when I return in triumph from the Ammonites will be the Lord's, and I will sacrifice it as a burnt offering." So then he went and fought the Ammonites, and of course the Lord gave them over to him in his hand, so he was triumphant. Then in verse 34 it says, "When Jephthah returned to his home in Mizpah, who should come out to meet him but his daughter, dancing to the sound of timbrels. And then it goes on to say that she was his only child. He had no sons, no other daughters. She was his one child. And so, of course, he's like, oh my gosh, I just made this vow. And so he just starts mourning and ripping his clothes. And he's like, oh my gosh, daughter, I made this vow to the Lord. And now, can you imagine? And this right here, this is the part of the story that we need to remember. This was her reply, starting in verse 36. "You have given your word to the Lord. Do to me just as you promised, now that the Lord has avenged you of your enemies, the Ammonites. You have given your word to the Lord. Do to me just as you promised." Her faith right there in that statement. Would you be willing to be a living sacrifice? The only request she makes is just to have time to go about, do some things, and 2 months go by, okay? And he did to her just as he vowed. Can you imagine? This story reminds me of Isaac when he was supposed to be a living sacrifice. And I imagine, like in scripture, it doesn't say that he fought his father. He did not put up a fight and argue. He was willing. But I can't help but think God just changed her heart in that moment, or she had a great example, her father, to follow. And because she had that great faith, and because she was like, do to me what you have promised. Still today, the Israelites carry on this tradition that each year the young women of Israel go out for 4 days to commemorate the daughter of Jephthah, the Gileadite.